Hello, fellow biology students. Yes, today we're going to be learning about one of the most important body systems, the nervous system. So, what is the nervous system? I'm glad you asked. Have you ever smelled, tasted, touched, heard, or seen anything? If so, then you have the nervous system to thank for this. The nervous system is responsible for taking in all of the outside stimuli from the world and sending it to our brain, where it can then process and send information to other parts of our body to tell us how to react to a certain sensation. We can sense the world because of our nervous system. Now, as you can see, the nervous system can be broken down into several different components, which we'll be going over in greater detail later. Here is just a general breakdown of the nervous system. The two broadest categories of the nervous system are the central nervous system and the peripheral nervous system. From here, the peripheral nervous system can be separated into the somatic nervous system and the autonomic nervous system. Then, the autonomic nervous system is broken down further into the sympathetic nervous system and the parasympathetic nervous system. The nervous system has its own special types of cells. These cells are called neurons and resemble the image shown here. As you can see, a neuron has many of the same basic parts of a regular cell. However, a neuron has other parts unique to a nerve cell. A neuron has many dendrites, which are the root-like structures that stretch from the cell body, as can be seen here. The dendrites grow to make synaptic connections with other neurons. Next is the cell body, which is also called the soma, where the basic structures needed to sustain the cell are stored. Next comes the axons, which extend from the cell body and are covered in a myelin sheath. This is a fatty covering that speeds up neural impulses. The axons end in the terminal buttons, which are here, which contain neurotransmitters. Neurotransmitters, which are these green circles here, are chemicals that enable neurons to communicate. Finally, you have the synapse, which is a space between the terminal button of one neuron and the dendrite of another neuron. Now I know what you're wondering. How does all of this work? Well, I'm here to tell you. All of the different parts of a neuron work together in a sequence when a neuron transmits a message. This is an electrochemical process. This reaction starts when the terminal buttons of one neuron release neurotransmitters into the synapse of another neuron. The neurotransmitters fit into receptor sites on the dendrites of this new neuron. If enough neurotransmitters are received to push past what is known as the threshold, then an electric change in charge spreads down through the other neuron. This electric message firing is called an action potential, and can travel as quickly as 120 meters per second. Anyway, when a charge reaches the terminal buttons of the neuron, they release neurotransmitters into the synapse. The process can then begin again if enough neurotransmitters are received by the next neuron to pass the threshold. It's important to note that neurons follow an all or none principle, which means, like the name suggests, that a neuron either fires completely or not at all. So we know that the nervous system brings info from our senses to our brain. However, neurons can only fire in one direction, from dendrite to terminal button. So how does the brain send information back? Lucky for us, we have two sets of wires, so to say. We have some neurons that take info to the brain, and another set that takes instructions to our muscles and the rest of the body. This process begins with a stimulus. Let's say, for example, that you hit your toe on the edge of your bed. Ouch, right? While you're jumping up and down in pain, sensory neurons, also called afferent neurons, have already sent information from your toe to your brain and spinal cord. From that point, interneurons take over and send the message to either other parts of the brain or motor neurons, also called efferent neurons. This second set of neurons sends instructions from the brain to the rest of your body, including your muscles, causing you to jerk your foot back and hop up and down. Now I know what some of you young scientists might be thinking. How will I ever remember the difference between afferent neurons and efferent neurons? Well, here's a quick pro tip. You can think of afferent neurons as taking in information at the brain, and efferent neurons as carrying the info that exits the brain. And now we return to those broad categories of the nervous system I mentioned earlier. We will start with the central nervous system. This is kind of like the processing center of the nervous system. The key organs to remember here are the spinal cord and, of course, the brain. The spinal cord acts as a messenger between the body and the brain. It transmits info from the rest of the body to the brain. The brain acts like a computer. It processes and interprets all of the sensory information it receives via the spinal cord. The second broader category of the nervous system is the peripheral nervous system. This includes all of the nerves in your body that are not encased in bone. If you remember, the peripheral nervous system is also divided up. The somatic nervous system controls voluntary muscle movements thanks to the brain's motor cortex, which sends impulses to our somatic nervous system, telling our muscles to move. The other half of the peripheral nervous system, the autonomic nervous system, controls, as the name suggests, the automatic functions, such as breathing, secreting hormones, pumping blood, etc., etc. This system is also broken down based on how our body responds to a threat, the so-called fight or flight response. The sympathetic nervous system is our alert system, our fight response. It increases heart rate, blood pressure, and respiration, and slows down digestion. The parasympathetic nervous system calms our bodies down after a stress response. If the sympathetic nervous system is the accelerator, then the parasympathetic nervous system acts as the brakes. It slows down heart rate, blood pressure, and respiration, and it increases digestion. The brain is truly an amazing organ. There are many different parts and structures to it, but for now, I'll just give you all of the major highlights. For starters, the brain can be broken down up into 4 main lobes, or regions. The first region is the frontal lobe. This region is thought to play a key role in judgment and reasoning, as well as foreseeing consequences, pursuing goals, and maintaining emotional control. The motor cortex, which, as you should remember, controls voluntary muscle movement. Next, you have the parietal lobe, which is located on the top of your head. This region contains the sensory cortex. It receives touch sensations from the rest of our body. Below the parietal lobe, towards the back of the head, is the occipital lobe. This region interprets messages from our eyes in the visual cortex. Finally, by your ears and temples, you will find the temporal lobes. This is where sounds sensed by our ears are processed, in an area known as the auditory cortex. Some other parts of the brain that you should probably be aware of are found in the forebrain. This includes the amygdala, the hippocampus, the hypothalamus, and the thalamus, which is not labeled here. Together, these structures make up the limbic system. The thalamus, which is located right around here on top of the brainstem, is responsible for receiving sensory signals from all of the senses except for smell, and sending them to the appropriate areas in other parts of the brain. The hypothalamus, which is located just under the thalamus, hence the name, controls many of the drives and basic needs, such as hunger, thirst, body temperature, and sexual arousal. The amygdala, shown here, plays a key role in emotion and social behavior, while the hippocampus, located here, plays a key role in memory. Now, we have finally arrived at the sensory organs. You know these 5 senses: taste, sight, smell, hearing, and touch. Where would you be without them? Sometimes we can take these senses for granted, but it's important to note just how truly amazing and complex these 5 senses really are. First off, let's talk about sight. The sensory organs responsible here are the eyes. Shocker, I know. But the brain also plays a large role, because the eyes don't actually process the information being seen. The brain does. You can think of eyes as windows for the brain. The process starts when light enters first through the cornea, which helps focus the light as it goes through the pupil. The iris is the muscle that controls the pupil, making it bigger or smaller, depending on how much light is being entered. The light then gets focused by the lens and then inverted on the retina in the back of the eye. Then cones, which are cells that are sensitive to color, and rods, which are cells that respond to black and white, fire and activate the bipolar cells, which then activate ganglion cells, which make up the optic nerve that then sends the impulses to the thalamus and then off, finally, to the visual cortex. Now, here are some fun facts for you. Humans, such as ourselves, only have 3 color receptive cones. However, other animals have more, such as the mantis shrimp here, which actually has 16 color receptive cones. Also, you may think that you can see color out of your peripheral vision, but studies have shown that you cannot. The next sense is taste. Chemicals from food that we put in our mouths get absorbed by taste buds on our tongue. Taste buds are located on papillae, which are bumps on your tongue. taste buds are found all over the tongue and even on some parts of the inside of your cheeks and the roof of your mouth. Humans have 5 different tastes. The 4 basic ones are sour, sweet, bitter, and salty. The 5th taste is called umami. This is a savory or meaty taste which can be detected from taste receptors sensitive to amino acids. Next sense, smell. Smell, like taste, also depends on chemicals. Molecules and substances rise into the air and enter through the nose. The cavity of the nose is actually lined with mucous membranes that have smell receptors connected to the olfactory nerve, or also known as the olfactory bulb. The smell receptors are sensitive to 7 main types of sensations. These include camphor, musk, flower, mint, ether, acrid, and putrid. Some researchers believe we could have as many as 100 different types of smell receptors. The next sense is touch. The main organ here is skin. Many people don't think of skin as an organ, but it definitely is. As you may know, some parts of the body have a larger number of nerve endings and are more sensitive. For example, the fingertips and the sex organs have the greatest concentration of nerve endings. However, the back of your elbow has a very low concentration of nerves. This is why you can pinch your elbow and feel almost no pain. But hey, no pain, no game, am I right? Anyways, 4 kinds of touch sensations can be identified. They include cold, heat, contact, and pain. Hairs on your skin magnify the sensitivity and act as a warning system for the body and brain to alert you of any potential dangers. And last but not least, we come to the final sense, hearing. The sensory organ here is of course the ear. The ear can be divided into 3 main parts: the outer, middle, and inner ear. Sound waves are collected in the outer ear, or pinna, and travel down the auditory canal, also known as the ear canal, until they reach the eardrum. This thin membrane vibrates as the sound waves hit it. This vibration travels through the middle ear via the 3 smallest bones in your body, known collectively as the ossicles, which then send the vibration to the oval window. As this membrane vibrates, fluid moves, causing a chain reaction in the inner ear, which causes the hair cells on the floor of the cochlea to move, causing the organ of corti to fire, sending the impulses to the brain via the auditory nerve. We have 2 ears which help us determine direction and distance of sound, as well as pitch and frequency. The human ear can perceive frequencies from 16 cycles per second, which is a very deep bass, to 28,000 cycles per second, which is a very high pitch. But get this, bats and dolphins can detect frequencies higher than 100,000 cycles per second. Now that's really high pitch. As you can see, our body is pretty well suited for the environment around us. Interestingly enough, we also have sensory adaptations. When a person is subject to an almost constant stimulus, the person begins to disregard that stimulus as the sensory organs have grown accustomed to it. This is sometimes also referred to as habituation. Here are some examples of this process in action. A person working in an office for a long time with a noisy air conditioner will grow accustomed to the sound. However, a person just walking into the office will notice the noise immediately. Also, a person living in the city will grow accustomed to the busy city traffic, while someone who lives out of the city will most likely be bothered by the commotion. Now, the body systems work because they are all interconnected with other body systems. Here are some ways in which the nervous system connects to other body systems. Specialized tissues and networks of nerves send messages to the brain. Also, calcium in the skeletal system helps nerves function and protects both the central nervous system and the peripheral nervous system. The digestive system sends sensory information to the brain, and the brain in turn regulates/monitors heart rate along with the nerves. The brain also regulates blood pressure and the respiratory rates. In the endocrine system, hormones give information to the brain that contribute to neural processing and development. Finally, urination is actually controlled by the brain. Humans aren't the only creatures with a nervous system. Similar systems can be found in other organisms as well. For example, many aquatic animals, such as fish, have what's called a lateral line system. The lateral line system allows the direction of movement and vibrations in the water surrounding an animal, providing spatial awareness and the ability to navigate in space. Nerves connect to the lateral line, which can be seen here in red, so the neurons can transmit stimuli to the brain. In comparison, starfish have what's called a radial nervous system. Starfish don't actually have brains, but they do have a central nerve ring in the middle of their body. Their arms are connected to the nerve ring, allowing them to sense and react to stimuli in their environment. Now, since the brain is unfortunately such a delicate organ, it is also susceptible to many diseases. One of these diseases is known as MS, or multiple sclerosis. MS occurs when the immune system attacks the protective myelin sheath that covers the nerve fibers, causing communication problems between the brain and the body. This can actually cause the nerves themselves to deteriorate or become permanently damaged. More than 400,000 people in the United States and about 2.5 million people worldwide have MS. Another disease that affects the nervous system is called Alzheimer's disease. Alzheimer's is a progressive disease. It destroys memory along with major functions of the mind. One may experience mild confusion or difficulty remembering, but unfortunately, as the disease progresses, individuals can even forget important people in their lives, as well as major events, and can even display dramatic changes in personality. Another disease of the nervous system is autism, which is a spectrum disorder. This neurodevelopmental disorder impairs a child from communicating and interacting effectively. It includes restricted repetitive behaviors, interests, and activities. The autism spectrum includes autism, Asperger's syndrome, childhood disintegrative disorder, and pervasive developmental disorder. But hey, let's try to end this video on a positive note. Here are some fun facts for you. Did you know that in humans, the right side of the brain controls the left side of the body, while the left side of the brain controls the right side of the body? Crazy, right? Also, if we lined up all of the neurons in our body, they would be around 600 miles long! Also, only about 4% of the brain's cells work, while the remaining cells are kept in reserve. Finally, the brain continues to send out electric wave signals until approximately 37 hours after death. And that's all for today, folks. Hopefully you've learned a lot about the nervous system. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you crazy kids next time.